Welcome to the forum at ATR on SAFM, South Africa's news and information leader. Well, the controversy, if you will, around the remissions, special remissions of sentences granted by government about a month or two ago. The controversy around that continues. The numbers of some of the offenders who have now been reincarcerated, the estimates, I think, are about 71 offenders at the moment. There are a number of NGOs operating in the sector who are saying that we will see almost half of the people that were released as a result of that special remission going back to prison, having done a lot more damage to society and also having cost the state a lot more money, simply largely because of the inability of the system to rehabilitate effectively. All right, that's what we're talking about then here on the program. I would like to hear what your thoughts are, and also how do we then deal with these matters? How do we get ourselves out of this one? It appears as if perhaps there are problems surrounding rehabilitation of offenders within the system. That's what we would like to talk about this morning. Let me just quickly welcome the guests then on the program, starting with Mr. Tom Moyane. He is the National Commissioner for Correctional Services. A very good morning to you, Mr. Moyane.
Good morning, Xolani, and good morning to your listeners.
I thank you very much for your time, Mr. Moyane. Also joining us is Claire Ballard, researcher, Community Law Centre, Civil Society Prison Reform Initiative at the University of the Western Cape. Claire, good morning to you.
Good morning, Xolani, and good morning, Commissioner.
Thanks, Claire, for your time. She's in our Sea Point studios. Also on the line, Arina Smith, Programs Designer at the National Institute for Crime Prevention and the Reintegration of Offenders, NICRO. Very good morning to you, Arina.
Hi, good morning, and all your listeners.
Thank you very much. Let me start with you, Arina. I saw an article where your organization, NICRO, was quoted as saying that almost 50% of these offenders are likely to go back in prison in a short distance in the future, simply because we aren't able to rehabilitate them properly.
Yes, I think it's quite well known, although no formal research really exists around the number and percentages of people going back into prison. We know that approximately 50%, half of the people return to prison within quite a short space of time after being released.
Is that a uniquely South African figure of people who, it's called recidivism, as I understand it, right, Arina?
Yes, about recidivism or people reoffending and returning to prison.
But is it a uniquely South African thing, or generally it happens across the board?
I think recidivism generally is a problem internationally, globally. People, obviously recidivism is a major issue that all correctional systems and people working with offenders do struggle with. However, the rates of reoffending and the rates of recidivism in South Africa particularly are seen as quite higher than necessarily in other places.
And my understanding of the objection to the special remissions really is that people are saying, well, these people have not even gone through properly the rehabilitation process and already you're taking them back to society, Arina.
I think one of the main objections was as well with regards to the planning and what happens immediately prior to these types of things. One of NICRO's main concerns was that when we rehabilitate people, we can't start 2 months in advance or 1 month in advance. We need to have a long run with people, getting them ready to actually adjust outside of a prison environment. And that is one of the main concerns, that when we look at rehabilitation, we need to look at rehabilitation happening properly from the time people step into prison. And the planning around these things and how quick and how fast sometimes seems a little bit concerning at points in time, particularly because we don't necessarily know about these things well in advance so that we can prepare people and then obviously their families on the outside properly.
All right, so let me go to the National Commissioner here. Mr. Moyane, firstly, give me the correct figures of how many offenders have already been reincarcerated after receiving the special remission.
Thanks, Xolani, and thanks for the introductory statement by Irena. The number of people who have been rearrested who have come back to us at 87 as to the date of the 28th of June.
87?
Yes.
Are you worried about this increasing number? Because it clearly is going up.
As a National Commissioner, we are indeed worried. In all instances, we want to have a track record that says reoffending does not occur at the rate as it is. But at the same time, we are comforted by the fact that that number, in comparison to the numbers that have been released into the community, it only constitutes 0.2%.
All right, 0.2% of 37,000, right? 37,783 offenders were granted special remission.
No, it's 87 of 42,000.
Of 42,000?
Yes.
All right. But nonetheless, I mean, 87 is a lot because some of the crimes that some of these people committed are really heinous crimes.
Well, 8701, it's a cause for concern for correctional services. And the minister in particular has indicated that we need to be very much on the ball, in the sense that whoever leaves our facilities, we could give some sort of guarantee and effort that the process of reoffending does not take place. But human beings in their nature, none of us can guarantee, including our stakeholders in NICRO, that when somebody leaves our facility will not be able to come back. There are socio-economic issues that might affect that particular offender or offenders coming back. But yes, indeed, as a correctional services institution, we are worried about the numbers. But at the same time, as I indicated, the levels of reoffending and the types of crimes that they have committed, some are alleged and they have not been confirmed by the courts, and the police are doing their investigation. Yes, there are cases wherein we feel that such crimes ought not to have occurred.
You mentioned socio-economic issues out there when people are released, but also I want to know from you, what are you reading in the re-arrest of these people? Is it simply a matter of socio-economic issues, or could there be an issue of your department's inability to rehabilitate them properly?
I would put the blame on the door of correctional services. I should think the blame also squarely lies with the community as a whole. Bear in mind that you have an individual or inmate who has been in our facility for some time, and the trend internationally is that of stigmatization, that when somebody leaves a facility, they are often referred to as ex-offenders, ex-cons, and the process of reintegration into the society is a cause for concern. That is why we are saying rehabilitation is a societal responsibility. To a large extent, our officials are doing the best that they could in terms of the inmates that are in our facility to provide them with the programs aligned to the types of crimes. But at the same time, none of us can guarantee that once he or she walks out of our facility, he or she may not commit any crime.
All right. Let's test that against what Ms. Ballard has got to say around these matters, because I would like to know from you, having heard what the National Commissioner is saying, do you think that the department is doing all it can to rehabilitate the offenders? Do they have the capacity to do all that it takes to rehabilitate these offenders?
My initial response is certainly that the department are trying, and it would appear, based on documents that they've put before Parliament and upon inspections done from our side and from the Judicial Inspectorate, that certainly programs do exist. To the extent that they do, however, my opinion is that they perhaps perfunctory in nature, and perhaps insensitive to the needs of the prisoners concerned, and this certainly is a complaint from the prisoners themselves. I mean, simply if we look at the annual report for 2010-2011, which came from the Office of the Judicial Inspectorate, there are well over 30,000 complaints regarding rehabilitation programs, and so there's no doubt in my mind that the department has the laudable goal to rehabilitate these offenders. However, it's a resource intense, expensive job, and it's perhaps quite telling that only 4% of the budget that they put aside this year in their strategic plan was 4% of the total for social reintegration.
What Miles Buda has indicated is listen. Certainly, I, as the National Commissioner, I would like to listen to views that are going to help us to meander through the difficulties that we're facing and also the issues that we are debating today. Secondly, the issue that was raised by a colleague who said there's somebody who has qualification in social work. I would like to make it open and public here that I would certainly appreciate that these colleagues who have special and scarce qualifications do get in touch with the department, especially Department of Correctional Services, Human Resource Unit, in order for us to deal with this matter. I also want to respond to Solomon Matikane. I'm really saddened by the fact that you have not got the proper responses when you, as an ex-colleague, creating an environment to help the department, you did not get the support. I want to call upon all the stakeholders and the public in general who would like to help us, because reintegration and rehabilitation of our offenders is a responsibility that affects all of us. That they should call us and be able to deal with this.
Claire, let me get a very quick last word from you.
Quickly, thanks, Xolani. I'd just like to respond to what Solomon said. I've met Solomon, and I think his organization does incredible work in rehabilitation. But he raises something that's incredibly important in relation to community corrections and parole, is that correctional services currently are essentially reduced to a policing role when it comes to the formulation and outcome of the community corrections processes. And that's something that should not be happening. Ideally, you don't want offenders to go to prison. You want them to undergo their rehabilitation in a community environment where rehabilitation is far more likely to work. And it's preposterous that people like Solomon have to hustle for clients. And in that respect, the correctional services should be playing more of a broker service.
All right. Arena?
So just like to say that I think prisons needs to be utilized much more appropriate for the people that needs to be in prison. That's a danger to society. That's potentially going to be there for a while, and then they will be going through rehab. And people that are not a danger. There's rehabilitation options outside of prison as well, inside of the communities, non-custodial sentences, for example. And at the end of the day, rehabilitation is a very complicated process. Sure. It's not something that's very easy and very narrow-minded, sort of like. And people who believe that people would choose to go back to prison have obviously never been in prison.
All right.
So I think everybody needs to work together.
Sure.